Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're chatting with Andrew Jack, a chef turned game designer. His debut title, Umami Friends, the card game, is currently on Kickstarter. Andrew, welcome to the binge. How you doing, sir?
Excellent. Thank you for the amazing intro.
Oh, it's great to we're just talking off air really quickly about kind of the whole chef world, which I find absolutely fascinating. And most people know someone that's in the industry. And as I was just saying before we went live, it is a thankless job, and the amount of work that goes into prep and kind of really the art form of cooking is probably underappreciated by most people. But what I hope we're going to get through in this podcast is kind of talk about some of the parallels between that and game design and kind of your journey getting there. So to start off with, let's talk a little bit about that. So you are a chef currently, or you were a chef, or kind of
Mhm.
what's your current status?
Yeah, so I work as a private chef now. Prior to COVID, there would be no way that I would have had time for a big board game design project like this. But I was doing big events, wedding catering, fine dining stuff, kind of like that. And then once COVID hit, that schedule freed up a lot. I went from having maybe, weddings just booked out every single weekend to literally zero events on my schedule. And that is kind of where the board game design hobby started really picking up.
Now, were you a game designer before that? Like it was, or not game designer, but did you play like a lot of board games kind of through the years? Is this like were you in the hobby, I guess, so to speak, outside of like, kind of game design?
So, rewinding way back, I have one sister, and when your family keeps kind of like old mementos and things like that, we have a literal storage bin of just old games that we made. Um,
Oh wow.
so we were prolific. I think we were just bored, if anything, but but we were really big on making games. We loved it. That was something that we did a ton growing up. And obviously you get busy, you get to adult life, and hadn't really done that since. I play a lot of video games, board games too, but I was a competitive. If anyone's familiar with StarCraft, things like that, I played that for a little while.
Oh wow.
So that kind of informed some of my gaming experience, but it wasn't until coming full circle all the way up till COVID that yeah, we got back into little designing games.
So how young were you when you're designing games? Like when you like literally when you're like a
Mhm.
tiny kid, or?
Yeah, my sister's older. She's 7 years older, so that was like something fun that we could do together. So yeah, I mean, basically as soon as I was old enough to kind of understand what was going on, she was like, "Let's make some games. Let's do it." We had some really. I was looking through the old box, just a bunch of like ridiculous titles. Extreme Worms, I think, is my favorite. It was trying to get a worm across a patio. A lot of silly stuff like that.
Well, that's amazing. But it's a good place to start, right? Like that whole creativity. Like I know a lot of people I talk to start off with kind of like homebrewing other games, right? They'll take like Monopoly and they'll add their own rules, or they'll take. I mean, I always give the example of Risk. My friends and I added nukes to Risk, right? So instead of going up to 10 with your army, you could cash in 100 to get a nuke, and then a nuke would
Mhm.
actually take out like a complete area of the board. And we had these little, remember those little things from the 45 records, those little plastic spiral things that would click into the, this might be before your time, but records used to have these little yellow kind of spiral shapes that would click into the records, and then that would allow it to kind of fit on like on a turntable. So we
Mhm.
get those, and we'd use those as like kind of the nuclear fallout area we place across the board. But yeah, it's kind of that homebrew, right?
That's
It's
awesome.
it's starting with something, seeing what you can kind of modify and adjust, and then hopefully create something of your own. And it sounds like you guys actually created like truly unique games, right? Things that were kind of had like were basic creations from scratch.
Yeah, exactly what you're saying. My mom was an art teacher, so she just had a lot of supplies and things like that. So we would do silly things like instead of a tile bag, I remember it was an empty Kleenex box with little cardboard chips in there.
Yeah.
You just shake that up, reach in. We were always Umami Friends kind of has a cute theme to it, and I think that might be a direct influence from my sister. I remember we would reskin, kind of like you were saying, we would reskin some like war games, but
Yeah.
we'd replace them with like bunnies and cats and things like that because she liked that theme better. That was a common theme. So yeah,
Oh, that's
lots of
amazing.
that.
And do you still do work with your sister at all? Like, do you guys still play games together, or?
We're really close. So the Umami Friends actually like began with she was visiting she we were all kind of snowed in at my parents' house during COVID. We live in northern U.S., Wisconsin,
Hmm.
where it gets pretty snowy, kind of like pretty much Canada.
Yeah.
So we were stuck together for about a month with nothing to do and a pretty bad internet connection. So that's where we were working on this and kind of coming full circle, which was really kind of fun, a nice silver lining to being stuck with COVID.
Did you pull any of those old games out and try to see if you could rework some of those at all, or were they like?
We pulled out some, and some of the I don't even know if I can call it mechanics. I was just the creativity was there, but some of the some of the follow through we couldn't even figure out how to play some of our original games. But no, yeah, we did. We worked our way through the box. Some really funny stuff in there.
I think the challenge for a lot of game designers earlier on is, and at least I ran into this, is I didn't write down rules. So I would create something, right? And then I would have like ideas and concepts and like even something somewhat playable. And at the time, I would think, "Oh, there's no way I'm going to forget this," right? And then
Uh-huh.
I had one, "Tanks but No Thanks," which was our first title that we ever launched on Kickstarter. Was based on a game I made 20 years ago or 30 years ago now. And
Uh,
I found the old prototype, and I just went to start playing it, and I'm like, wait a second, I don't I don't fully remember how to play it. We played this for
uh-huh.
hours upon hours, like when we first made it,
Uh-huh.
and I had to kind of go back through and really do some forensics on my computers and try to find something somewhere where
Yeah.
I was able to kind of somewhat piece the rules back together and kind of get to the back to a good place. But man, I wish I had have like detailed out the rules much better and kind of like glued that on the back of the board or something so I wouldn't lose it, right? Because
Uh-huh.
once it's gone, it's gone. It's kind of like that thing where you have a great idea before you go to sleep, right? Or a great
Uh-huh.
idea when you first wake up and you're like, oh man, that's amazing. And then you go shower, brush your teeth and everything, and then poof, it's gone, right?
Uh-huh.
And you got to have that journal so you write it down right away and you don't lose it. So the Umami and Friends then. So that was during COVID, and so obviously I think food kind of maybe ties into the fact you're a chef, and is
Uh-huh.
that kind of the inspiration for that, or where did the idea kind of come from?
Yeah, totally. It's a mashup of a few influences. It actually just started with literally just a pack of post-it notes. We just started. I was cooking for my sister and brother-in-law over COVID as part of my Christmas gift. Is that I was making like a fancy meal for like all the days of Christmas, basically.
Okay.
Um, and it was just after one of the meals. My sister's a good artist, and she was just drawing, I don't know, a little like silly food character. And then my brother-in-law and I joined in with some less cute food art too. And then we had all these little post-it note cards, and we just started giving them like types, kind of like in Pokemon. How there's fighting type, there's
Yep.
psychic type. This we were like, here's a vegetarian type, and here's a noodle type, and stuff like that. And then that is kind of where it started like formulating into a game. The first game was like the most simple, like kind of like pick and pass, like poker kind of style, um, like set collection game that you can possibly think of.
Yep.
And then it started developing from there.
Wow. And then how long did it take you kind of to put the game together, like to get it to something where it was at least a workable
Mhm.
prototype?
Um, to 3 years maybe,
Yeah.
honestly. At least its current state. going off of, we came up with this sort of the one of the most fun, I guess, parts beginning was that we had this game where you had these little food guys, and then again, we could make sets out of them. So the sets would have points. Like if you got four tacos, you would get 10 points or something like that. And we had a passing mechanic. So at the beginning of every turn, you would just pass a card. And my brother-in-law and I, both being nerds, got really interested in sort of like smoothing out that curve. Like, how do we make the point values pretty much reflective of how hard it is to make a set, but not just in a vacuum, including the fact that you're passing a card,
Mm-hmm.
which is a little more complicated than just like probability math. So something that was just supposed to be a little stupid poker game, we started like making a script and like doing a bunch of like calculations and stuff like that
Oh
on these
wow.
things.
Now, are either
And
of you programmers at all, or?
no, he's really he's smarter than I am. He's a structural engineer with far more experience with like a little bit of like scripting, Excel, stuff like that. But I had all the time in the world, so I started trying to learn some scripting and things like that myself, just to simulate these hands.
And then with the scripting, so is this like Python or something you're using for?
Yeah, exactly. It was like Python, and then again, instead of just like simple probability math, like what's the probability of four tacos, that doesn't really take into account the cycling of things.
Mm.
So that's kind of where we started getting a little bit more nerdy about it. Kind of the same thing where I probably should have written down my notes. I don't even. I'm so far beyond that stage now that I can barely remember what the end results were. But we had a pretty smooth curve after a while where we had maybe like eight different unique recipes, and
Mm.
they're all pretty well balanced. So it started becoming kind of reading your opponent instead of just going for the one that's the best. For a long time, passing spaghetti was the only proper move until we cleaned that up.
And how many
Yeah.
food items do you have in this game?
We have over 50 now.
Wow.
So there is like an ingredient deck. So kind of what I was talking about, just kind of these little guys that have types on them, and those are the base component ingredients. I kept the hand size as the base thing, so you have five of these cards in your hand, and then you can combine them to however you want into different recipes. So that base set has some of the characters, and then there's another 10 like main recipes that you can build. Again, an artifact from the original version, and now there's also 25 plus like rare recipes, which are different unique recipes that you can build in every game too.
And is this designed to be scalable so you can just keep adding food items and keep adding more recipes, or
Mhm.
and does it have to be rebalanced, or how have you guys approached that?
Yeah, so again, my background came a little bit more from video games and TCG stuff than it did board games. I've played a bunch of board games too, but yeah, that was kind of my background. And one thing that I always didn't like about TCGs was things like the power creep, and since you're building your own individual deck and bringing it, there was always issues with expanding and things like that, and banned cards and all that. And
Mm-hmm.
the biggest solution that I saw to all this, including making the game totally accessible for everyone, was to just make everything available in the base set. So a big part of my game design philosophy is that you can make a lot of different house rules, or you can swap in, say, expansions cards. You can take out cards that you don't want in the base set. But since it's always like a shared market that you're buying from, the game will always, at the very least, be balanced between the two players. So you can kind of change the win condition. Maybe you can add a broken recipe, but that recipe will always be available to both of you. So it really makes the game super modular. And then that way I can keep on just adding to this set, um, which I'm happy about.
And you had it as originally set as 2 to 4 players. Was there ever any time during the development where you guys kind of stretch that out or push that to like maybe even up to 6 players at all? Or
Mhm. Especially just due to the really like light aesthetic.
yeah.
I think when I pull it out at a party or something like that, everyone's like, "Oh, I want to play," and I have 10 people in a circle, and it's hard to describe, especially if you're not familiar with the board gaming space, that making a game accessible from a wider range of players is pretty tough sometimes.
Yeah.
So the way that I've dealt with that now is the base, I guess, kind of competitive game that you have is valid only for 2 to 4 players, and then I'm developing on both ends, sort of. You can kind of imagine like a Mario Party mini game,
Yep.
where the rules are a lot more simple. And again, it's a shout out back to those original development days. Just making a really kind of far more simple, a little bit more poker like game with a little bit of like agility, kind of like little mini games that you can play with those ingredient deck. And then on the other side, I'm also developing a solo mode as well.
Oh, that's
So
amazing.
that'll really expand the player base.
Well, I'm showing on the screen for those who are watching live or on the replay. First of all, congrats on your campaign. It's funded. You still got 14 days to go. I'm gonna put this in Canadian dollars. That's the only way I can see it. But you're roughly at $59,000 on a $14,000 goal. So you've crushed your target. So congrats on that. 410 backers. I'm sure you're very, very happy. This is a huge number for a first game. So congrats on that. But the one thing that really stands out as soon as you start scrolling this page is the artwork. I mean, the artwork is phenomenal. Can you talk a little bit about the artist that you've brought in for this?
100%. She's incredible. We're good friends now, so just and sing her praises forever. We started out, and my sister's a good artist, but we just literally had these little post-it note cards, and I had those post-it note cards, and I went to a lot of prototyping conventions, and one thing that I think we can all understand as game designers, and I'm sure you've ran into this too, is just if you want people to play your game, it has to really look like a true board game, right?
Yeah,
That helps a ton. So just these little sketches weren't exactly cutting it. So I started looking online, and again, I had a lot of time during COVID, so I did a really exhaustive search actually for someone who would meet kind of the exact ideas that I had going on. I think part of making a board game marketable is also really just kind of fitting into a niche. So I really had to pick, like I wasn't going to make a food zombie game or something like that. So I wanted to make a cute food game. So after niching down there, I started looking at a bunch of stuff, and the artist here that I absolutely love, Pikarar, her art, one thing that really stood out to me is that all of her characters have an insane amount of like just individual charm or personality.
yeah,
Um, which there's a ton of great artists out there, but by the time I'm adding 50 characters, I wanted to make sure that each one kind of had an individual identity.
yeah. That's fair.
And that's something that I saw that she was doing supremely, supremely well. So I reached out to her, and we started out with a smaller set of characters. I think it was just like 15 or 20 at the beginning. And then I just kept on coming back and being like, hey, can I commission more? Can I commission more? And now we have, yeah, over 50, and these food characters, animal characters, all kinds of stuff.
It's amazing. It's that kawaii style that's just people that love that style, right? It's again pulls you in very, very quickly. One thing I noticed when I was going through your page too is that you had these kind of collectible cards, I guess, for lack of a better word. So let's talk a little bit about that because I want to make sure I fully understand and the listeners. So you have the base
Mhm.
game, and then
Mhm.
there's these like collector packs. Can you explain
Yeah,
what that is?
yeah, totally. So one thing as I developed the game that became really apparent was that even stronger than just a general board game player base was the Pokemon player base.
Mm,
They're really huge on the game. They're huge fans, and I think we can all kind of remember the nostalgia days of ripping open Pokemon packs and how that was exciting. And while I like that, I was absolutely never going to make it TCG. I don't, you can look into the success rate of TCG games, indie ones, and things like that, and how many make it. And besides that, I don't like that they have a like limited level of accessibility. something that was always like that I didn't like growing up was that I was never really able to play Magic the Gathering or something like that
Yeah.
because I didn't have a lot of money growing up, and I just didn't like that barrier to entry that I couldn't get cards or things like that just because I couldn't afford them. So that's one side where I wanted to make the game accessible for all, but then on the other hand, I had this big player base of Pokemon players who wanted something special, and it sort of started developing where now I kind of have this grand vision. We'll see if it works. We'll see if it doesn't. But as an opportunity to give sort of early Kickstarter backers something unique, and also maintaining this integrity of play, including everything in the base set. All gameplay vital components are in like the immediate tier. So if you
Hmm.
buy tier one, you have all the cards with all of their abilities. And then after that, what I'm calling these shinies, which are alt arts by the artist, those are the collectible ones. Those are in these little tiny randomized packs with just holofoils. And basically, what you can do is you can take like the character cards in your deck and you can just swap them out. They have the exact same abilities, so there's no
Ah,
real like added gameplay content.
that's cool.
But it's kind of influenced basically by video game skins. Like, if you played, I don't know, like League of Legends or something like that, you pick your
Hmm.
character skin and that's your guy going into battle. That is where I really wanted to lead. And then, even more excitingly, something that I'm doing with it is that I'm making some of these alternate skins for like tournament winners and things like that. So again, if you're a really good player, you don't actually get this advantage where that you can just spend and play to win. But if you're a really good player and you go to your like local board game shop and you win a tournament, you might get like let's say the frog character in the game, and you might have like a silly hat on the card,
Mm.
and then it's just like everyone else. So the frog without the silly hat, anyone can play as him. But now you can bring the silly hat one and kind of show it off because you can be like, oh, I won this at the last tournament. And that's kind of my vision where I'm going with it. It's kind of splitting the line between the two. So I don't know if I'll stick with it, but I thought it would be really fun for the first Kickstarter at the very least.
Yeah, it's clever. I mean, giving people the ability to still have the same playability. So you're not changing the playability at all.
At
So you
all.
have the collectibility. So you have the collectible part of it, but it's not kind of separating kind of the people that can afford the collectible parts versus those who can't, and it makes it more accessible to everybody, which I think that's awesome. They would even kind of put that thought into it is pretty cool. How do they get those packs then? Are they add-ons, and is it just randomized the packs that you throw into the box, or how's that work?
So the base set tier is all gameplay stuff, and then after that, the next tier up is like some auxiliary, like a game mat, things like that. And then when you look at the bigger all-in tiers, that's when you start getting into like just truly collectability stuff. So you can add in these packs just as an add-on, like you said, real simple. I think it's $3 add-on for just like an individual pack just to see some of these cards. And then if you're a completionist or someone who really wants like a ton of these cards, that's where kind of the all-in tier really starts leaning. I've noticed again, my audience is totally split. Some people couldn't care less about these shiny packs, and then other people need all of them. So it's funny to see. There's some people with a really like none of these packs, and there's some people who have put in an order for like 100 of these packs,
Wow.
and it's all just depending on if you're a collector or not.
And these
So it's
won't be
totally
available
optional.
after the campaign?
So they won't be right now. I'm putting like a fun, like little first edition seal on them just to make them kind of exciting. I'll round up slightly. So however much I'm producing for the campaign, let's say I need, I don't know, 800 packs. I might produce 1,000 just because that's the manufacturer price break.
Yep.
But the only way to kind of get them guaranteed with the first edition seal is to back the Kickstarter. And then after that, once those are sold out, then those are sold out. I might do a re-release, but they wouldn't have like a seal or something like that. And
Got it.
that's all just dependent on how it's received. It's a total experiment.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes.
And where are you
Yeah.
having it manufactured? Who are you using for the manufacturing?
Hopes Games.
Oh, hopes.
They're yeah, and they're I just spent a long time. Something that was really important to me was again just getting a really nice aesthetic on the holofoil cards.
Hmm.
Again, a lot of the players are Pokemon players, and while a lot of manufacturers do have high quality foils, they had a little bit limited ability, like the materials that they were using
Yeah.
and the ability to print partially on the cards was really important to me. So a lot of the cards in Umami Friends are matte, where the important information and the character is, and then the backgrounds are shiny.
Mm.
And that was super important to me, and that narrowed down my search for manufacturers really quickly. That's not a common thing that a lot of manufacturers can do.
Yeah.
So I love Hopes. They've been amazing so
Hopes is
far.
fantastic. They're doing bunny drops for us, which is literally shipping right now to our
Oh,
backers.
cool.
And in my search, and I talk about this on the podcast a lot, is the more manufacturers you can get to quote on items, the better. And right now, my list is about 14 core manufacturers I have quote on every project. And I find it very interesting. It really depends on the type of game. Certain manufacturers are going to be stronger than others, right? And so my comment on that was always like with Hopes, because they're in-house printers. If you're just doing cards, they are probably the best quality you're going to get for the best price. If you're including meeples and things like that in there, you're probably going to maybe go with like maybe a Watts, who are good at doing small components and things like that. If you're looking for a balance, maybe like a long pack. They're all good. I mean, there's lots of great manufacturers there, but Hopes is definitely is one of my top. Is my well, we're using them for one of our games, so we're very
Yeah.
happy with them, and they've got a wonderful team over there. So congrats for arriving at that team for this game. So as you kind of go through this, have you kind of started mapping out kind of what comes next, like after this cart? Like, are you in it now to win it, so to speak? Like, are you doing like game design going forward, or are you going back to the chef work, or what's your plan?
Yeah, so my schedule now really works out. I cook privately now, so I cook meals like lunch and dinner in house, and then I have all this time in between on breaks where I can't really go anywhere, but
Yeah.
I have time to work on something. So that is absolutely perfect for game design. I chose the format of Umami Friends with this sort of recipes and characters because I want to just keep on investing in that universe. I call it
Mm,
the Umami verse.
yeah.
A lot of the content that you can see, like I made a map that's going to follow along with solo mode. Right now it doesn't have a use like in the game until the solo mode is developed, but basically I'm just constantly doubling down specifically on this IP.
Hmm.
So there might be more games in the future, but they'll all be Umami Friends related. So I'm just going to keep on building out this universe.
It feels like a bit of a trend that this starting is this kind of creating. I mean, we're even doing it now with Cities of Venus. So we've got we call it the Cities of Venus universe, the CVU, right? And we have all these different games that are standalone games, so you can buy any of them and play them as their own game. But the narrative of them all kind of fit into that same story. And I've interviewed a lot of people on this podcast, and what I'm starting to see more and more now actually is people talking about this exact thing of looking at their IP, saying how can we turn this into a universe where maybe it's not just the classic, hey, here's an expansion, or here's kind of 2.0 of the same game, but no, here's a different game, but we're going to utilize the characters that we've created in this world. Is that your plan? Is it to create standalone games, or is it to kind of continue on the cards, or what have you mapped out?
No, kind of looping back when I would work in the kitchen. Shout out Armando. We would talk about like anime plots and things like that. So we kind of had developed this overarching story of what happens in the Umami verse. This comet hits and this like energy makes food alive, and we developed this whole. It's literally it has like 6 seasons now at this point, even though it's
Yeah.
not made at all plot wise, and we're really we got into that, and that informs, I guess, where I'm going. I Right now my entire plan is to basically just make expansions for
Mm.
Umami Friends. So whatever frequency that people appreciate, and whatever frequency I can do sound game design. I don't want to break my own game. I want to make sure it's all really nice going out. I'm just going to release expansion packs for the existing game, I would love to make some sort of online version or mobile based on interest. Would be something that would be really awesome in the future. Always thinking about that. But otherwise, yeah, it's all going to be focused on this game. But I really do like a lot of different genres. This sort of set collecting and engine building thing is only one aspect of types of games that I like. So I would be very happy to branch out eventually. But right now, it's all focused on this. I can't branch out
Yeah.
yet. Yeah.
For those who want to check out this campaign, I am going to put a link in the show notes, or you can search Umami Friends on Kickstarter. That's UMAMI, and check it out. It looks awesome. And you're talking about kind of that story at the beginning with the meteor hitting. That's actually in the video of the campaign, so you can get kind of the intro story there. Andrew, I want to wish you all the best on this campaign. I know you've got to be very happy with where you are so far. Based on the direction you're going, this is going to end very, very strong. So I'm sure you guys are just tickled about that. And I look forward to seeing this thing hit the market and see the expansions that are still to come, my friend.
Thank you so much. This has been amazing.
No worries, my friend. Take care. Cheers.
Take care.
This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply subscribe to our YouTube channel, Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.